So just another quick update on the Ducati project. Slightly changed a few things since my last video. And running in the bike, just checking for everything, I found out that my little ST2 oil cooler here, I think it had more to do with the AN fittings itself. Embarrassing again, I didn't go with like an Earls or a Goodrich AN fitting. Here, I'll bring it over here. Some of these fittings here were they weren't like top of the line, and you know what, I think I saved a few bucks, but it's just false economy here. So NOS, I'm not sure of the provenance of this company, but it's not like a Russell. And so what ended up happening was I was getting a bit of oil weep around this area here, and anyone who knows me, like, engines should be dry on the outside, absolutely, totally, no matter what. I can't stand it when engines even just sweat a bit of oil. It drives me crazy. So I think the quality of the fitting really wasn't what it was or what it should be, so I was getting some oil sweat around these fittings, and I just said to heck with it. I was going to revert back to the stock oil cooler system for now, and maybe play around with something like this later on. I've got an 848 cooler I could also mount if I so desired, but the reality was, when people were racing these things, especially our short little sprint races, overheating really wasn't a problem. So a lot of monkeying around for, unfortunately, a little gain, and a lesson learned that for $4 or $5 per fitting, it makes sense to go with the best quality stuff. I think this is just, I wouldn't say crap from China. They were bought from a US distributor, but not what it was cracked up to be. So lesson learned, go with the best you can afford, and that stuff, it was really not that much more expensive. So oil cooler is back on the bike and running the way it should. Air intake, so I'll switch around to this side so you can see it better. So originally, with the air box, and it was kind of bizarre in that there was a short little velocity stack and this big long one going into the air box of the stock Ducati air box. And to me, having one real long one and one really short one has got something unbalanced. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So anyway, I bought a second short one, of which I've already covered up. And you can kind of see it here, but it's just got a nice little 45-degree bend and a nice little Venturi stack flare. And I went online and bought these Pipercross sock air filters, left a minimum of 20 millimeters gap between the intake for the Venturi as well as the tip of the air filter, zip tied it on there, and so it's fairly solid. So I've got one here, you can see the other one buried on the inside as well. There's clearance, and we'll see how it goes. And I know what's going to happen when I post this online or on the forums. There's going to be guys that say, oh, you shouldn't do that, and you should run an air box, and you'll never get the same sort of performance, and blah 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 blah. Like, the reality is, I'm not racing AMA Superbike here. I'm not racing MotoGP. I had to get rid of the air box because all of this wiring and crap would normally sit right here, and it would look like garbage. So yeah, I've moved it in there. Maybe with a bit more work, I could have jammed the wiring harness somewhere in the air box, or maybe even run a monster wiring loom and tidied it all up. But I'm going to go with this, and I know I'm going to make perhaps some sacrifice at certain points in the rev range, but it's a race bike. So when I do get it tuned, I just got off the phone with Custom One Cycle in Selkirk. They did my Bandit 1200 with flat slides. Like I said to the guy, look, I'm not going for outright performance. I'm not going for, sacrifice reliability to lean it out and make the most power. I want it to run safe. I don't want it to be belching black smoke out the back, which is what my Bandit was doing before I got the aftermarket carbs. The flats, the CV carbs just wouldn't work. Hook it up, get an air-fuel ratio going, get it at its primary or ideal setting, whatever that is, 13.1 to 1, and then go with that. If this makes ideally I'm shooting for 70 to 75 horsepower. I'll be happy. A bike this light in the class that I'm in, I think there's other bikes out there that make a bit more power, but they're heavier. And then again, like anything else, you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars to win a trophy. So there may be some head work in the future. I found a place in the UK that offers or promises some increased performance, simply because the valves are going to have to be done eventually anyway, and Ducati heads are notorious for being poorly designed for airflow. I'm not going to worry at this point about a big bore or anything like that. Just try to keep it reliable, or as reliable as you can get a 2-valve Ducati. What else? Oh, the front brake. I did take it for a couple semi-legal spins around the block, and maybe it's the new pads and they haven't quite bedded in yet. Although the feel at the lever is just about perfect, it's just not. I realize it's going to be a compromise. So I ended up actually making money on a bike transaction. I bought another SSDS swing arm from Japan. Got it for a good price, imported it, and then turned around and sold it to a Ducati MS4 member for a bit of a profit. Paid off the expenses for the importation and the purchase, and any sort of profits went into buying a matching front rotor and another 999 left side caliper this time, with decent pads actually, from Germany. So when that gets here, I'll run the second caliper with the second rotor. I'll have a little, obviously another brake line coming to this other side, and it should work. The 16 millimeter radial master should be the right bore and size, because the stock axial brake lever was also 16 millimeters, and someone who knows physics better than me understands the difference between radial and axial. But I'll start there, and if I have to go up to a larger, say 18 millimeter, I'll do that. What else? So I'm leaving this old slick on the back because I know dynos can be notorious for chewing up tires. And yeah, I'll go to this place in Selkirk, Manitoba. It's about a 3.5 hour drive. I'll get up at the crack of day, drive out there, and get it set up. Unfortunately, because of some family commitments, holiday, and just the timeline of getting this done, I'm going to miss round 3. So I'm 0 for 3 so far in racing this year. I will, come hell or high water, get out to round 4 and round 5 in August and September, which should be a good lead up and no pressure, and set this thing up, because I haven't had this bike on the track yet. I've raced 900ss's before and actually did half decent on them. They're lovely bikes, but I've ridden a lot on the street this summer, but I'm getting a bit rusty. So take it out on the track, take it easy, figure it out, get used to it, and then progress slowly as the bike comes into its own. I'm sure there's lots of setup that needs to be done. Anyway, I think that's it. So we'll do another update hopefully after it's been dynoed in mid-July, and I can show you some awesome dyno charts that show some decent horsepower.